welcome to the Blood Brothers podcast. We are joined this evening by myself, Sean Coleman, Chris McDonald, and Rob Parker.
Hello.
And in our guest seat this evening, we're joined by the amazing Mark Billingham, author of the multi-best-selling Tom Thorne crime novels. Welcome.
Thank you. Multi-best-selling is quite multi. It makes it sound like I've sold more than one.
Well,
multi. He sold 12 copies worldwide.
There's a lot of authors who go, the best-selling series, and like, well, one of the books in the series was best-selling. Let's be technical, but
okay.
I'm on a strong suspicion that more than one of the Tom Thorne crime novels has been a bestseller.
Probably.
I was going to say that's probably a bit better than the print run of my debut. I think. Sold one.
I've sold one.
How are you this evening, Marky? Okay.
Oh, man, yeah, I'm ticking along very nicely, Tar. Well, as well as any of us can be ticking along now. But
in the bin fire of planet Earth on 2021. Yeah.
I could happily have a bin fire outside. It's absolutely freezing here today.
Yeah.
It's cold, isn't it? It's seriously cold.
I took the dogs out for a walk just at about 6 o'clock or at about 5 o'clock, thinking we'll be all right. It'll be nice and quiet. Nobody's going to be out. Absolutely rammed full of people on bicycles, desperately trying to get home in the freeze, and it just started shitting it down with snow. So yeah, everybody was happy. Anyway, we digress. This is ridiculous. Nobody's here to talk about the weather.
We're here to talk about Crybaby.
Are we?
Amongst other things.
Okay.
That's coming out paperback next week, 18th of February.
That is correct. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Well, it's my 20th novel. Blimey, 20 novels in 20 years, and it's because it was the 20th novel. I wanted to do something a bit different. It's a prequel. It's a prequel to my first ever novel, Sleepyhead. So it takes Tom Thorne back to 1996. So we get to see him as a younger man, as a married man, as a son who's with two parents who are still living. And crucially, we go back to a time before CCTV and mobile phones and the internet and all that stuff, which is a joy as a crime writer because that stuff just gets on your nerves, quite frankly. You have to constantly dance around it because most crimes are solved almost straight away by CCTV, mobile phone, cell site technology. And there's only so many times Tom Thorne can, Thorne picked up his phone. Damn, it was out of battery. Oh, no film in the CCTV camera or something. So to not have to worry about that was great. And the book is set. Well, I mean, I'll tell you something about the plot in a minute. But the book is set during the time of the Euro '96 football championship.
Oh, nice.
Which is great.
Shearer was at his best.
I remember very well, and I was at some of those games. And the weird thing is, even though to me it's recent, it feels like yesterday. I can remember exactly what I was doing. It was like writing a historical novel, just going back and seeing what the world was like, even back in 1996. It was weird.
Yeah. Well, it is. I mean, it's sort of one of those weird things where you just kind of go, hang on. And I work with people in their 30s.
Yeah.
Who were born around then.
I know, it's right. It's 25 years ago, that's all. But just going back to, just popular culture, what people listening to, what was on the radio, what was on TV, what movies were out. And I love all that stuff. That's the kind of research I could do all day long. But I also had to do some serious research about what it was like to be a detective back in 1996. What kind of technology coppers had. No, the Met didn't even have external email back in 1996. So the most advanced bit of kit Tom Thorne has got is a pager, right? But not even one with that has text on it. It just beeps. And wherever he is, he has to go and find a phone box if he can find one that someone hasn't pissed in, and call up and go, "Hello, Detective Sergeant Thorne, you wanted me?" Oh, it's great. I loved it.
Well, and that 96, I think, was that's such an interesting period to write about as well, because that was, I mean, the national sentiment in 96, especially, it's funny that you mentioned Euro 96, the tournament as well. It couldn't be far removed from where we are right now, could it? Really, last time I can think of this national sentiment having a bit of positivity and brio to it was 2012 with the Olympics. They're the only two times I can really equate in my head. So it must have been fascinating to go back to write about 96.
Yeah, I mean, it was just doing odd bits of research about what was... I mean, here's a little weird one, for example. So one of the set pieces in the book takes place during the England-Scotland game of that tournament, which some of us thoroughly enjoyed. And Thorne's boss is Scottish in the book, so it's a great little scene. But I just did some research into that game. I was originally trying to find out something really prosaic, like did they play Flower of Scotland before the game? You know, what was the national anthem back then? And during the course of researching that, I found out. Can you remember what else happened that day? What happened that morning?
There is something pretty major, isn't there?
Yeah. It's
all been swept up in Gaza scoring over Colin Henry's head.
We completely forgot about the gigantic IRA bomb that virtually destroyed the central Manchester. That tells you something about how different the world was. Because can you imagine today there being a major terrorist incident like that and the football's still going ahead?
Oh, you'd be crazy, yeah.
It was weird. So stuff about that mad cow disease... Take that splitting up. I mean, there were major things going on.
Well, that was devastating. I don't think I've not forgiven Robbie for that. I love that kind of. I did it when I was researching the Soho Noir things, going back into the 80s, and sort of going beyond the culture and everything else, and kind of finding the political undercurrents and everything else that were going on. Again, looking inside what was allowed or not allowed in the police force, and those all happened to be dealing with gay characters and whatever. But it was the police who were in the main part. It was the police who were causing the crimes against the gay people, so that you could create this. You could almost create this sort of 1920s feeling, prohibition feel about them. Because it was them against the police, the police weren't going to come in and step in, but just going into all of those, like trying to explain to a 17-year-old now that 96 we didn't have email. What you're saying about the 80s is
fascinating. What you're saying about the 80s. I mean, I've just watched, as I'm sure you have just watched, It's a Sin, and it's hard. Even though I remember again a period I remember really well, you just go, really? Was it like that? Oh my God! You see some of this stuff and it's so vile and so kind of authoritarian, and you just go, God, I can't believe the world was actually like that. In 96, what you've got the major government and lots of law and order stuff. And in fact, ironically, they were pumping about to pump some vast amount of the crime budget into CCTV. It was going to be the future. But it was just there to stop people stealing cars. It was just there to stop people doing drugs up alleyways. Nobody ever thought it would be a major force of, fighting proper crime, catching murderers and rapists and stuff. It was just a sort of, God, it's so weird the way the world turns.
But also just a bit like not having that that anticipation of looking now at sort of where we've got AI systems doing facial recognition in much faster time than those super recognizers that we used to have. And it's just not even being able to predict that something as simple as a really crappy 64K camera strapped to a wall with loose ball bearing mounts was going to be the linchpin of crime fighting.
No. And like I said, it is the kind of bane of a crime writer's life. All that stuff. I mean, the only time I've ever escaped it before was when I set a book, 10 years or so ago on a remote island off the coast of North Wales, where the only place you could get a phone signal was at the top of the lighthouse. And there are no cameras, there's no nothing. And that was a joy. Because, it's a whole set of different challenges, when you can't be calling people up every 5 minutes. But it was nice to be able to try and plot something that didn't, at the end they just saw the villain on a piece of footage or traced his, his phone signals and stuff. So, no, it is good. I did enjoy myself.
No, I have to say I really enjoyed it with the Sohos, just being able to, if a call needed being made, the person had to be in to receive it.
Absolutely.
Not even talking about answer phones.
No. I can remember saying to a friend of mine, the day I get an answering machine, take me out and shoot me.
Shoot me. Yeah.
Answering machines are things wankers have. You know, the day I get an answering sheet, it's all over. Isn't it weird?
Don't even talk to me about a pager.
Yeah, I know. And so I got Thorne at one point misses one of the games in Euro '96 because he has some murderers to catch, and but when he gets home, he's got it on tape. He's got on VHS, so he's able to play it. Which is a miracle to him. And watch the boring bits on fast forward and stuff, and just stuff like that it seems remarkable. I still talk about taping. I still go, we taped such and such a program.
Yeah.
And the kids, Granddad.
I know. That, at the moment, trying to explain to the children that things, they weren't on demand for us growing up. Like we didn't have the array of choice. Like when we first moved moved house at Christmas. Stupid idea. But there was a lag between the broadband arriving and it was curtains. Just the kids were like, what do we do? What do we do? And then I said, look, we've got Freeview. Look at this, 70 odd channels here. And they went like, well, that's rubbish. No.
Try having two. Try having two channels.
Yeah.
And that constant argument over who was going to get up and press the bastard button on the telly to change it to the other channel.
Oh, yeah. The joy of a remote. I was reading, funny enough, I was reading a Beatles. I'm a bit obsessed with the Beatles, and I was reading whatever latest Beatles book I was reading. And the first time any of the Beatles saw a remote control was when they went to Graceland to meet Elvis, which was a sort of weird encounter anyway, all very strange. But they could not believe this thing was probably this big, and whatever. But Elvis is sat there going, and changing it. And, John Lennon and the rest of the boys are just going, what the hell? It was see that as a major moment,
I always volunteered to do it at our house because the particular buttons had a really satisfying click. Like you could push it in, it would go. As it went in, I thought, I love that. I'll be the guy. I'll be the gopher. It's the little things in it, Mark. It's the little things in life.
At the time, I had some help from a retired detective who helps a lot of crime writers, called Graham Bartlett. Brilliant guy. He's helped out myself. He helps Peter James, various writers. And he was a serving copper in '96, so he was able to help me out on, what was life generally like, in a police incident room back in '96. Not very many women, really still not very many women, not very many officers from any ethnic backgrounds. It was all a very sort of white male thing. But also they had a very, very early kind of weird, putative portable telephone, which they would carry. It would take about two people to carry it to any remote location, right? And in this book, a lot happens in the woods, in Highgate Woods, where this child goes missing. So they have to take this thing, and it's like he sent me a picture of it, and it's like this huge grey metal with a sort of curly wire coming off it. And nobody can ever get a signal on it. And that was what they had only 25 years ago.
Brilliant.
There's a danger of this podcast, by the way, just turning into a complete nostalgia fest.
I love it.
We're not talking about spangles in a minute.
We love it.
That's a far cry from Michael Douglas in Wall Street with his, backpack battery.
Yes, yeah. Just to go slightly back in time, but not as far as '96. Mark, I wanted to show you this. This is in the dark. 2008, I believe. Is that right?
You tell me. Life's a blur. I don't know what it's called.
Well, it's stuck in my memory because I took this to Oktoberfest in Munich in 2008.
Okay.
And I read it on the way there. I've got to be honest, I didn't read it a lot while I was there.
There's better things to do at Oktoberfest.
There was other things to do.
Yeah.
And I managed to read about 5 pages on the way back because I might not have been feeling too great. So you've been round the world with me, Mark.
That was the first...
Or at least round the beer tent.
That was an important book for me because it was my first standalone book. So I'd written, probably 7 Thorne novels on the bounce by then. And I knew I wanted to do something different. And it's a big step doing that first standalone. And you kind of don't know how it's going to go. You've built up a kind of fan base for the series. But I remember talking to an American writer called Michael Connolly about it, who has written some brilliant standalones. In fact, the first book of his I ever read was a standalone, not one of the Harry Bosch books, a book of his called The Poet. And he said to me, do it. You've got to do it. If you feel you want to do it, you must do it. He said, but be prepared for the drop in sales. There will be this drop in sales because people go, oh, is that a Tom Thorne book? No. Thankfully, it kind of didn't happen. I think things were starting to change about 10 years ago in crime fiction. It was all about the series. It was all about, that was the holy grail. You know, when I walked into the publishers that wanted to publish Sleepyhead, the first question all of them asked was, is this the start of a series? And of course I just went, yep. Oh, 100%. Yep.
Why wouldn't it be?
But it's then changed, and a couple of books did it. There's a writer called Harlan Coben who had written a series up to that point that had done sort of all right, hadn't set the world on fire, a series featuring Myron Bolitar, and he then wrote
another great series.
Well, it is a great series, right? He then wrote a standalone called name's gone out of my head now, with a really catchy title that I cannot remember. And it was a huge hit. It had a great hook, and it was a huge hit. And then Dennis Lehane wrote a book called Mystic River, which is a wonderful, wonderful book, which, again, up to that point, his series is fantastic, the Kenzie and Gennaro series. But
it's unreal.
It was the standalone that kind of went, stratospheric. So people had started to go, yeah, okay. So now what most people who do what I do, most people who write series, will write, 2 or 3 series books, then a standalone, then a couple more series books, then a standalone, because it's the only way to keep the series fresh, I think, is to step away from it.
It's a kind of palate cleanser, isn't it, to keep your writing on point and stop you getting into the sort of tropes of, I've created this character, blah, blah, blah.
And also, there's stories that come into your head that just don't fit. So where I could crowbar my copper into that, but it's not really going to be about him. So the standalone. I've just finished a standalone. I got a standalone coming out in July, and I'm really excited about it. I've had such a lot of fun writing it. It does recharge your batteries a bit as well, I think. Yeah.
And how does it feel going back into sort of almost origin story kind of time for?
Well, it was one of those things. It's like whenever you do something different, whether it's a standalone or something like Crybaby, you get really excited, and then you're 50 pages in and you're a bit lost, and you go, "Why am I doing this?" That's like that thing of stepping out. It's not called a comfort zone for nothing. So that because when you step out of it, you kind of go, "Oh, why have I done this? I could just be back doing a thing in Thorne and Hendricks and watching the football and having a curry, and it'll be fine." Same as I always do, but it's always worth doing. And so the origin story thing, it's like a blank. I started with a completely blank slate. And one of the very best things about it is when you've got a long running series, when you've got a series that's like 17, 18 books old, you have this huge backstory. You carry this weight of backstory that you sort of drag around with you through the books. And you've got to sort of bear it in mind, even though what happened in book 12 is probably not mentioned again in book 16. There are references, there are things, there are characters that have developed, and you carry the weight of that all the time. And you've got to sort of honour those characters' pasts and everything that's happened to those characters. And you've got to have that timeline in your head and all that sort of stuff. Going back to before the first book, freedom. I didn't have to worry about any of that. And in fact, what I could do, which was rather more fun, was have like reverse Easter eggs. So part little things in that readers of the series would go, oh, I know what that's going to be.
I know who that bugger is.
Exactly. I had a lot of fun doing that. So I had Thorne meet Hendricks for the first time, and they've been like this double act now for 20 years, and I was able to write their first meeting, and I had such fun with that. The fact they kind of hated each other immediately was just brilliant.
So reclaiming your own fictional history of the world you created.
Well,
that's amazing.
It's kind of weird. I mean, although I'm not one of those, what is impossible to do. So in fact, a friend of mine, a writer called John Connolly, wonderful Irish writer, he once told me a story about when he'd written one book, whatever it was, book 11 or something, and he delivered it, and his editor said, "It's great, I love that, but you do realise you've given away the killer in book 9. And at the time, I think John went, "Oh shit, that's bad." And now I think, now I kind of know that he doesn't care about stuff like that. And the book I'm currently writing, which I'm halfway through, has the return of a major character in it, a major Thorne's nemesis, I guess, the bad guy of all bad guys is coming back in this book. Ooh. But it means a lot of references to some books from the past, and at least twice I give away major things that have happened in past books, and I've kind of gone, and so what? It is what it is. You can't do... Okay, so I'm gabbling way too much, by the way. Just tell me to shut the fuck up.
Just go, Mark, man. Just enjoy it. Go.
There's a book called... Which book is it? A book called The Killing Habit, which is about 3 books ago. And there's a thing that happens at the end of that book, and I can't describe what it is, but this major horrible thing happens that changes the lives of Thorne and Tanner and Hendrix kind of forever. The climax of that book. So in the next book, I can't pretend it hasn't happened, but I can't say what it is. So you dance around it in this ridiculous way where Thorne's going, the thing, the thing that happened. Oh, yeah, the thing. And so I've been stuck with that for 3 books now. So in this book I'm currently writing, it's all out in the open. Exactly what happened. I'm dealing with it. It's just pissing me off too much carrying that secret around,
Yeah, because there's a thing about series where you just go, like, the story of the book should stand alone, that you should be able to pick up anywhere. But the serial elements, as with anything else, the serial elements should be linear and have structure. So you cannot pretend that a character's husband hasn't died.
No, right.
Like before, because you're like, oh, she's fine now. No, it's all cool.
Has to change. I mean,
him 2 weeks later.
I don't want Tom Thorne to be the same at the end of one book as he is at the beginning of that book. So there's no way he's the same at the end of 20 books as he was, But in a way, one of the points we're kind of dancing around here is the law of diminishing returns when it comes to writing a series, and those of us that do it are all well aware of it. Nobody ever says, the best book in that series? Number 14. Nobody ever says that, ever.
Yeah, 14 is a shit number. It's always 15 to 17, is it?
People will tend to say book 1. They tend, and I bloody hope that's not the best book in the series. If you haven't got better, there's something wrong. But there does come a point when you go, I don't want to be that writer that writes a book too many or 2 books too many. And when the little voice in your head sort of goes, enough, kill him off or pasture him out or whatever, you've got to be brave enough to do it. It's tricky. There's no. I love all the great series, but I don't think there's any doubt that Raymond Chandler was a lot less interesting in Farewell My Love than he was in The Big Sleep. The great thing about Sam Spade is that there's one book. He's become this iconic detective. One novel. That's it.
Yeah, but I think that part of that is down to, like you were mentioning about what number someone falls in love with, and I think it's often the first one they read.
Yeah,
isn't
true.
It? And that's also a total testament to the achievement of the writer and the series that's been created. So, but I don't know. I wanted to ask you, like, how do you keep track of everything? Everything the series lore that you've created. Do you have a document that you have it all written down? Is it all just in here?
It's my own fault, but I chose to do it that way because I suppose it's because the first book I wanted the first book to be about the victim. I wanted the first book, Sleepyhead, to be about this girl Alison who spends the whole book in the coma. And the bits I enjoyed writing more than anything were the bits when you're inside her head. I needed a copper. Obviously, I needed a copper. There'd been this crime committed. So, here he is, Tom Thorne, boof, off you go. And I wrote down nothing. I did not have a dossier on him. I did not have any kind of Bible, that goes, this is where he went to school, this is what he has for breakfast, this is his family tree, nothing. And I thought, that's good. That's a good thing because I'm going to keep surprising myself and therefore hopefully surprising the reader. Peel away a new layer of the onion with each book and things can happen. Like he can suddenly, his brother can turn up because I haven't said he hasn't got a brother. Do you know what I mean? But what it does mean is the odd email from readers that go, why are his eyes brown in book 5 and green in book 6?
Oh, God.
I fuck it up all the time.
Contact lenses, coloured contact lenses. You're trying a thing, all right?
So that lore, that carrying away, the readers do it. When I was writing Crybaby, so I suddenly realised, oh God, Tom's mum can be alive again! Hurrah! So I go back and then I literally had to say to my wife, "What's Thorne's mother's name?" I had no memory of it, and it's one of those things where it's very difficult to search back through 17 books. Yeah. I'm certainly not going to read the bloody things again.
So I had a brilliant editor on the Sarah Noir's. I had a brilliant editor who created a Bible of all of those things. So it's like, first mentioned there, they first met here, they did this, the age, he was age. So, and she would constantly be like, wait a second, if it was on this day and he was born then, and, you're like, oh shit, he has aged about 30 years in the last 2 weeks.
The time thing is the most tricky thing of all because I started to age Thorne in real time. So he was the same age as me when I started, and I thought he's a year older with every book. And I suddenly realised I was going to run out of,
he's going to have to retire.
I was going to run out of landing strip very, very quickly. So I then made the decision, well, hang on a minute. Just because it's a year later in terms of when the book comes out doesn't mean it's a year later in Thorne's life. This can be a case that started the week after the last book. But it started to get complicated because then I'll get things like, whoa, hang on. So how long has he been in a relationship with that person? Or how old's that kid if that kid was 4 years old in book? It started to absolutely do my head in. And now I'm kind of guessing. I'll be honest with you. I'm kind of guessing. So that when, if my proofreader or an eagle-eyed reader does go, hang on a minute, surely that character's got to be, I go, yeah, you're probably right.
If he was X years old in Euro 96, how the fuck is he only 30?
But you get some characters. I mean, the weirdest one of all is there's a writer I probably shouldn't name. I won't name her at the minute. whose series has been going on forever. And her major character has stayed, as far as I can figure out, the same age the whole time. Well, everybody else has grown up around her. It's really weird. Like she's got a picture in the attic.
Let's be honest, Vera hasn't dated. Vera hasn't aged at all.
Well, you can do that, or you can say, well, do you know what? Like Thorne is getting older. He's getting older. There's no question he's getting older, and I'm reflecting that in the books, and he can't kick doors down anymore, and he gets knackered running for the bus or whatever. But I'm not going to say he is this age. I'm almost fighting shy of saying it is this year. Saying what year it is, especially now. People writing books now are really worried about, how do you reflect
the C word?
COVID? Yeah, the C word. It's tricky. It's very tricky. So as far as I'm concerned, the book is happening whenever the reader's reading it, if you see what I mean. You can refer to specific things, but then real life overtakes you. Can you imagine being someone who'd written a book set in September, when 9/11 happened? September, delivering it a month beforehand, and then that book comes out, and you just look like an idiot.
Exactly. But it's also, I mean, we were talking to Matthew Ross last week on the launch of his book, and he was saying there's this sort of thing about, you read a book in which somebody's, doing really well for themselves and they bought a house in Chelsea for £65,000 and you're like, nah, love. I'm instantly out.
Yeah.
And I think that was, if you can avoid at all putting a date on your
it is true. It's very true.
It can hold.
But you'd be amazed how much readers do keep you on your toes. Readers do keep track of those things.
Seriously.
An Ian Rankin reader did a really weird thing a few months ago. A huge fan of the Rebus novels. Plotted how much Rebus drinks in every single book.
I've seen this.
And then
Poor
Ian
guy
the
must be
spreadsheet.
dead by now.
It was fantastic. Just going, bloody hell, he was having a bad year here. He put 45 whiskies away during that book. Amazing. They made this. I mean, that's a lot of work to go to that much trouble.
Yeah, but it's lovely. Yeah. I can always tell when I'm doing the first edits on authors' books as they come into the publishing house. You can tell whether they've written in the morning or the evening as to whether the character's drinking a lot of coffee or a lot of beer or a lot of wine. There's 17 coffees have gone down in the last paragraph.
Yeah.
And then 17 wines in the later part of the evening.
This is a tale of the supernatural.
The Tapes, a podcast of the uncanny.
Do you believe in ghosts?
Join me, host Christopher Goldie, and guests as we discuss the best in unsettling television and film.
Who is this? Who is coming?
Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Search for @TheTapesPod. Part of the Pod Dojo network.
I like the way that you talk though, Mark, about like you mentioned then about how you had to ask your wife about and you said like what's Thorne's, like these people are like so embedded. These people that you've created are so embedded in it's like embedded in your day-to-day world. Like, do you have do they feel that way to you now?
Yes, but oddly, not physically. This is the odd thing, is that I've never really given a stuff what any of them look like. It's a thing that I've started to reflect more and more in my writing. I'm a big believer in what Stephen King calls not doing the reader's job for them. So that that both in terms of just prose style, really simple stuff like just saying "said," That's it. Just not shouted or whispered or muttered or any of that shit. Just said, and the reader can work out how the line is being said. That's the job of that's what reading is. But also not describing in any great detail what characters are wearing or what they look like, or and very early on I took the decision not really to describe Thorne. I described him a little bit in book 1, which was a big mistake, and I took that out when the anniversary edition came out last year.
Oh,
wow! Because I've not cared about it. So because I'm in his head looking out at the world, so I know what he thinks about. I know what he would say. I know what he thinks about almost any subject. But what he looks like, neither here nor there. Obviously, readers have an image, and that's what's really interesting. I remember when about 2 months before the TV series with David Morrissey was aired, we had a preview, and we showed it at the Edinburgh Book Festival, and the lights went down, and the screen came down behind me, and we showed this trailer, of which I was enormously proud, and I sat there watching this going, isn't this great? And it finished, and I turned around to the audience, and I said, what do you think? And the woman at the front went, he's too tall. And but fair enough. She's right. For her, he was too tall. So readers have a physical image of what a character looks like. I don't at all. And to this day, I don't see David Morrissey, not for a second, when I'm writing Thorne.
That's amazing.
Which is great, even after he's been cast.
Yeah, no, I absolutely don't.
Start writing Thorne.
You can tell the writers who do.
Yeah.
I mean, if you've ever read the Inspector Morse books, there's a point at which Morse became John Thorne. I mean, he never was up to that point, and Colin just fell a bit too in love with John Thorne, and that's fine, But the way readers take ownership of a character.
It's a good job Jack Reacher didn't become Tom Cruise.
No. Okay, so here's a good story. So,
diminutive angry man.
Okay, so at about when are we going? 6-7 years ago now. A great book was produced called, God, my brain is going. Have I got a copy of it up here? I can't even bloody remember what it's called. It was edited by John Connolly and Declan Burke, and it's a huge compendium. It's loads of crime writers from around the world picking their favourite crime novels and writing an essay about those crime novels. The title will come to me before we finish. Anyway, so at the World Mystery Convention about 5 or 6 years ago, they had a mass signing of all of us that had contributed to that volume. My story was my piece was about The Maltese Falcon by Dashiell Hammett, which is my favourite crime novel. So there were about 40 writers in a huge semicircle and a big crowd of people going around the whole semicircle, and it was alphabetical. So I'm sat next to Lee Child, and this is just before the first Reacher movie comes out, right? And people were screaming in his face. I mean, literally fans of his coming up, going, could you sign that for me, Mr. Child? How could you? How, Tom Cruise, you monster! And I promise you, absolutely furious with him.
I didn't do it.
Really? And he's really being polite, going, well, wait till you see the movie and da-da-da-da. And he said to me afterwards, but it's kind of, on the one hand, it's not nice to be screamed at, but it's kind of flattering that the readers have taken ownership of the character that much. That they... I suppose it's a kind of flattering thing, but they really don't like it if you do the wrong thing, if the wrong actor plays them, or screaming in his face, screaming.
As if he's the god of all things and in control.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
We've got this amazing A-list actor. I mean, he looks nothing like your description, but he is Tom Cruise. So,
well, that is the thing. That's what got the movie made. And I mean, you see that an awful lot of time. With
follow the money.
John Hannah, great actor, but he was never Rebus, not in a million years.
Yeah.
But John Hannah got that series made. And it wouldn't have been made without John Hannah. So that's if you're going to do that deal with the devil for television or film or whatever, there's no point bitching about it. You just got to let it go and deal with all the angry emails and letters you get from readers going, they changed the killer. Why? The shit I got just from that one series. Where's Thorne's cat? Why is it not set in North London? Why has he got a different car? Why hasn't Hendrix got a shaved head? Because the actor wouldn't shave his head. It's not a conspiracy. The actor just it's always really simple. People,
I've got another gig coming up.
I know. Unless I literally knelt on top of him with an electric razor, it is what it is.
I love this. I always think about book adaptations as
Books to Die For. The book is called Books to Die For.
Books to Die For.
That's the book you need to go and get.
Thanks, Mark.
I knew it would come to me.
No, it's the. I always think about adaptations as just like like an alternate take on a universe that you already like, and to have that, I mean, why wouldn't you want? To be honest, I try not to get. Well, I can't remember ever getting upset about a book adaptation because it's another take on something I already really like, and if it doesn't work, so what? We've got more material, more stuff for me to enjoy about it.
It's a different animal,
but also you really like the first.
Yes.
I mean, you cannot take a 400-page novel and turn it even into 3 hours of television. And I got 3 hours per book, which is pretty generous, you know. When you're talking about some of those later rebuses, they were 1 hour, you know, a novel in an hour. You can't do that without an awful lot of chopping and condensing, and we don't need that, and let's get rid of that. And, you know, it's a different beast, and you just have to accept it as such. I mean, some of it's funny. Some of it is kind of funny. I mean, DL and Pascoe, right, which was a big hit series. You know, it's brilliant Reg Hill. They were great with Warren Clark. But do you remember the original DL and Pascoe? Bet you don't, do you?
No.
Back in the midst of
time, I don't think so.
ITV had the rights to DL and Pascoe and made a series with the comedians Hale and Pace.
Yes, they did. Yes, I do remember that.
You know, it's horrifying.
I'm going to claim I was out of the country at the time, but
or maybe it's just too traumatic to remember. I mean, it's just horrific.
No, I do. I have a very, very vague recollection of that now.
Yeah.
Was that was in the 80s, wasn't it?
It may even, I think early 80s, and eventually Reg Hill got the rights back. And my other favourite casting one is brilliant. You know, the Burglar books by Lawrence Clark. Brilliant series of books, the Burglar Library. So Bernie Rodenbach, who is the burglar, is this sort of urbane, Jewish kind of white guy. When they made the movie, Whoopi Goldberg.
I did not know that.
I mean,
Jumping jack flash.
You know.
Oh man! I suppose. Oh dear. If I got to that point, I think I'd be like, right, there you go. You do whatever you like with this now, because I suppose you get to a point where you can't be too protective over your own work, can you?
You in a way you shouldn't be involved. I mean, I've been involved in all the things I've had adapted, which is probably a mistake. I'm too much of a control freak to just run away in the other direction. But they'd really rather you weren't. You know, they always kind of go, would you like to be involved? Really hoping you're going to say no. And they'll take you out for a couple of nice lunches. You know, the story goes that, you know, you throw your book over the wall, they throw a bag of money over the wall, and you just run in different directions. And that's probably the best way to go, because, you know, I'm not a screenwriter. I've got to let somebody else do what they want to do. And it only got tricky once. I fell out with the screenwriters of the Thorn series once, when there was a line of dialogue, I can't remember what it was, and I didn't like it. Really hated this one particular line of dialogue, and they said, "Well, what would you do then?" And I just suggested this line of dialogue, and the screenwriter said to me on the phone, "Oh, Thorn would never say that." And that was when I went,
Whoa!
Whoa!
On one hand, it's nice to know how invested that person was.
Yeah.
You know, that they were really committed to making it work.
Yeah.
But wow,
Didn't end well.
Sheesh.
When I was at university, I had a lecturer who wrote on. Do you remember the series Boone?
Boone?
Yes.
Back in the day.
Back in the day when I was an actor, I was in Boone. I'm not joking. I was in Boone. So I do remember it.
Were you?
Yeah, I was.
And you do remember it.
You won't remember the character I played.
Well, so he was one of the writers on it. I'm now going to go
stunned you, haven't I? Into silence.
Archive. Were
you talking about Boone with Michael Elfie?
I've never met anyone who was in Boone.
Are you talking about Boone with
Michael
Elfie? Yeah, I was in that.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I fucking love that piece of trivia knowledge. And he was writing this, and he basically kept getting notes back going, no, Boone wouldn't do that. Boone wouldn't smile. Boone wouldn't think about. And he kept trying to give him emotions and thoughts or whatever, and he just kept getting sort of knocked back by the producers, going, "No, this is you're making him think too much. You're making him do too. So he just basically was like, Boone walks into room. Boone sees thing. Boone walks out of room.
Well, you've got to leave something to the actors. You've got to let the actors
Take
get
your
on with
monkey
it.
script.
Yeah.
What was your character's name?
Oh, I can't even remember. I don't even remember if he had one. I was just this copper who turned up in a few episodes with. I was with Nick Morrissey, and I mean, I can remember it ever so well. Rehearsing with Michael Elphick in this rehearsal room, and I was in all sorts of rubbish when I was an actor. Dempsey and Makepeace, Bravo, and
Dempsey and Makepeace was not rubbish.
Oh, it was.
It's
not aged well.
Well, I mean, because I'm a big fan of Maid Marian and Merry Men.
Well, there you go. That was
even better.
That's a job I'm actually proud of. That's a show I'm actually proud of being in. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah. And that's essentially how I became a writer. I was a jobbing actor, and I got this job on Maid Marian, and I was in that for like 4 or 5 years. And by the end of it, Tony Robinson, whose baby it was hugely busy, and I got involved in the writing of it. And so by the time that show finished, I'd sort of by default become a TV writer. So yeah, I probably wouldn't be sat here talking to you if it wasn't for that show, of which I have nothing but happy memories. Running around in a forest every summer with a big sword.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, brilliant. You're not even allowed to do that
I
anymore.
know! What's the world coming to?
I was going to ask Chris. Chris, do you have any Twitter questions?
Oh, God, yeah. Let's get this out of the way.
I've got a few. One that links quite nicely to what we've just done is, have you ever worn tights? So
every summer. Although they were kind of Hessian-y things. They weren't like ballet tights or anything like that. They were sort of horrible woolen tights that I had to wear under my chainmail. So, yes.
Lovely. That's from Amanda. You're prolific on Twitter for your jigsaws over lockdown. Do you have a favourite?
Well, I discovered it wasn't until I'd done a few that I discovered you could have them made. So there's a company, several companies now, because jigsaws have gone like mental during lockdown. It's been a big craze. So I get my son, who's better at this stuff than I am, to like get 12 of my favourite Elvis Costello albums and make them into a montage, and then I can have that jigsaw made. So I've done that a few times. All the Beatles albums, I've really enjoyed doing them. And my publisher very nicely had a jigsaw made of all my book jackets, which was
it was awesome.
Fun. That was fun to do. I've got a great one on the go.
What do you do with them after?
I'm doing Spirit of the 80s right now. So
nice.
I'm trying to complete a little section that has Neighbours and Blake's 7. It's great. It's just lots of little cultural references from the 70s was the one I enjoyed the most, obviously, but because that's my era. But there you go.
I found out a fact about Neighbours the other day that Erinsborough is an anagram of neighbours.
Oh my God! You have just blown my mind.
I know. I was completely blown away too. Yeah.
Oh, when you discover things like that. My most embarrassing discovery of recent years was it wasn't until about 2 years ago at Christmas that I realised in the song "I Saw Mummy Kissing Santa Claus" that Mummy's actually kissing her husband.
Yes.
I just hadn't realised. I thought and I'm not saying I believe in Santa Claus, right? Still, I'm not saying that, but I just never occurred to me that this innocent little, is singing about, what will Daddy say? Well, of course it is Daddy. I just didn't get that until 2 years ago.
Did you think it was like a harrowing ballad about this kid growing up in a
kid
completely
wakes up one
dysfunctional
morning and there's
setting?
this strange man with a white beard snogging her mum. I just didn't get it. But that Erinsborough thing that's mind-blowing. That's mind-blowing.
Isn't it? Did your revelation about the Christmas song inspire your short story in the anthology?
Yeah, it did. Yeah, Underneath the Mistletoe last night. Yeah, no, I absolutely did. I did have that in my mind when I was writing it.
That's great. I thought about that song. I'm gonna sandwich the Twitter questions with one of my own because I bought the red hardback Sleepyhead, beautiful book, but that killer was like one of the most sinister things I've read, where he wants to trap people. It's terrifying. Where did the sort of inspiration come for that?
I'd read a book called The Diving Bell and the Butterfly, which is an amazing non-fiction book by this sort of French photojournalist who I think had a stroke and developed locked-in syndrome, and all he could do was blink, and he dictated the entire book by blinking. And I just thought, this is astonishing. But then I was searching around for ideas. I was thinking I was going to try and write a crime novel. And so the sick and twisted part of me went, I wonder if you could do that to somebody on purpose. And at the time, my wife was directing Casualty. And she said, come in and meet our resident, medical advisor. There was this amazing guy called Phil Coburn, who became Phil Hendricks. He is Phil Hendricks, sort of shaven-headed and tattooed and all that. And I went and met this guy who was amazing. And he said, well, wow. He loved it. He loved how sick the idea was. And he said it would be immensely difficult and incredibly technically complicated. And if you got it wrong by as much as, a millimeter, they would die. And that's when the kind of light bulb went off in my head. And I thought, I've got, the serial killer who isn't trying to kill anybody. And so that was where the hook came from. And yeah, I knew I'd got a decent idea.
Yeah, man. Well, you've kind of answered another one of the Twitter questions there, because someone, I can't remember who it was, wanted to know, do you take inspiration from people you meet or know for characters?
Sometimes. Most of the major characters are named after comedians I used to work with when I was on the stand-up circuit. Thorne and Holland and Brigstock and Kitson and a few of those. Not really. I mean, a lot of characters are kind of mashups of, I'll take a little bit of him and some of her and put them together. And yeah, obviously people tell you stories. You hear stuff because, people go, what do you do for a living? And you tell them you write crime novel, and they want to tell you all the most horrible stories they've ever heard. They tell you about really weird, sick shit. And the human part is going, that's terrible. And then you're going, I'm having that. It's a weird, a weird sort of schizophrenia,
I do like it when it comes out in the, because I do quite before all this obviously happened, I wrote a lot in pubs because with the kids being at home and stuff like that, I couldn't get my head down. But I find pubs as a massive safe space. And then when someone sees you tapping away in the corner of a pub, like they go like, hey, what's going on here? Yeah. And if it comes out, someone invariably comes and sits next to you and goes, do I have a story for you?
Yeah.
It's one of them. It's like, there's a chance it'll be gold. There's also a chance it'll be,
yeah.
So, well, a lot of the time it's someone trying to scam a free autobiography.
Yeah.
That's what it usually is.
Steve Mosby, great writer Steve Mosby, writes an awful lot in a pub in Leeds. That's where Steve writes.
Yeah.
Not now.
It's nice. Well, it's a bit like there's a goal. I think there's, like when you're good at playing pool after 2 pints, and then you're terrible after 4 pints.
There's a sweet spot, right?
There is where everything just works. Yeah. It's the same for me.
Well, I often wonder if writers have a sweet spot in that when you start, you've got loads of ideas, but you're not necessarily a very good writer when you start. By the time you've got to 20 books, let's say, he said, picking a figure out of nowhere. Maybe you think I'm as good a writer as I can be, but I've used up all my best ideas. It's a kind of weird. So you think maybe book 13 or 14 was the best one, maybe, because I could still, I was still getting better and I still had some good ideas. I don't know. Anyway.
And are we allowed to know anything? You mentioned a standalone coming out in the summer. Was it July?
Yeah, coming out in July.
Are we allowed to know anything?
I can do better than that. I can show you.
Oh,
well, I can't
read it to us.
There's no. Oh my lord! This is the first proof copy, which I got a couple of days ago.
Nice.
So there's no cover because cover to be announced, but you can see what it's called. Or you probably can't because it's backwards.
Nice. No, it's coming through.
Came up right. Yeah,
it's backwards.
Nice, great.
Amazing.
Anyway, it's called Rabbit Hole, and it's coming out in July, and it's a standalone set entirely on a psychiatric ward. That's about it, really.
Wow,
that's about all I can tell you. And Thorne will make his usual cameo appearance. He has a little cameo appearance in all the standalones, so he'll pop up somewhere in there.
Should we play our game and then?
Let's do it.
There's a game.
There's always a game. So
excellent.
We did play a 1-star superstar where you had to guess what the book was, and then we talked to Matt Veselovsky a few weeks ago, and he inspired a new game.
Okay.
So the new game is I've had a look at someone who's given you a 1-star review. I'm not going to read it, but I've looked at what else they've reviewed to see if they're as critical, and sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. So I'm going to give you 2 different items, and you have to tell me whether they liked it or they didn't.
So this is somebody who's given me a 1-star review.
Yes.
This is their reviews of other things. Okay.
Their Amazon username is Complicated Caris.
Oh,
So,
But they've probably been on this podcast.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
the first
ambivalent
item,
megaphone for all sorts. Yeah.
the first item is an oven made by the company Amica. Did they give it a 1-star or a 5-star?
That's quite an expensive item, isn't it?
It is.
I think they gave it a 5-star.
Okay, Mark 5-star. Rob, Sean?
I think he absolutely hated it. I just think this oven was the worst. It's the worst oven.
I'm with Rob. I think if you spend that much money on something and you're disappointed by one of Mark's books, then you must be a 1-star kind of guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. It is a 1-star.
Yeah.
What was
And it's quite
what's wrong with it?
Well, it's quite a harrowing story. I'll read the review. My daughter has also had a dreadful experience with Amica. I think she thinks she's replying to somebody. When she rang to explain the carbon monoxide alarm was going off, the customer rep tutted, repeated the complaint to someone in the background who said, "Oh, not that again," or some other rubbish. They know they're selling cookers not fit for purpose. Their engineer came out and disconnected the cooker as he considered it dangerous. But like the other reviewer, Amica told her it was her own fault for buying it because her kitchen was too small and so refused an exchange.
Oh, my God.
Do not buy anything from Amica.
These are the people you're attracting, man.
I
to buy your
love
books.
Me and Chris Brookmeyer do a sort of 2-man show together, which we've been doing at festivals for the last few years. And it's very rude. It's very kind of late night. It's not like we don't talk about our books or anything like that. It's all very rude, and there's a game in it, a huge game show, which is all based around swearing. And one section is where we just read out our favourite 1-star reviews, of which there are many. Some of them are just hilarious. Much more fun than reading 1-star reviews. You know, bought this used, bit tatty, cover fell off, made me feel sick opening it. 1-star. I mean, that's the review, isn't it? Made me feel sick opening it.
That's for the cover.
This is not my book, it's my husband's, so I've not read it. 1-star. What kind of review? Some of them are just hilarious. They are just fantastic. I would urge any author just go to the 1-stars.
Oh
Yeah.
no, I know I've done this before, but I do a 1-star mug with my favourites on, Mark.
No.
Get them printed up with my
that's
favourite
genius.
of my own stuff. Yeah,
That is
so
genius.
in the morning, you know, when you're having your little. Well, I don't now because I drank it so much the handle came off.
right.
But there's nothing like a kick up the backside in the morning to get you going without,
I
by
love
hearing
them.
how much
I
I hated
absolutely
it.
love them. I got a
I'm
1-star review for a book of mine called Scaredy Cat, and the review went, on the front of this book, Martina Cole says it's the best book she's ever read. It's the best book she's read all year. I can only assume it's the only book she's read. Some of them are great. To spend time synopsizing this book would be to waste time that could otherwise be spent gazing at floating dust. That's one of my favorites. That's quite good, isn't it? That's quite poetic.
That's good. Yeah.
I love that. I love Rob's 3-star review, which just said book.
Yeah.
3 stars.
Nailed it.
The ones that are even weirder, though, are the reviews that go, "This is the best crime novel I have ever read." 4 stars. You know, what the fuck have you got to do to get that extra star? You got to go down and read it to them. I mean,
Let me tell you.
and then, thanks to this game, you find out they've given a toast a 5-star.
that is a great game. That is a great game. I shall congratulate Mr. Veselovsky on that next time I say that's a very
Right, what's your other one?
One more item. It's a personalised My First Christmas bauble, which is in the shape of a snowflake.
Oh,
that's it.
is this the same person?
That's it. So yes, same person. So a First Christmas bauble, personalised.
So we know
1-star.
this person hates my book and the other.
And the oven, yes.
Yes, that's correct.
What do they
They
think
like the
of-
bauble.
Yes.
Oh Christ, they've got to like something. 5 stars for the bauble.
Yeah, I'm saying 5 stars for the bauble.
I'm with Mark.
This was
I'm 5 stars
yeah.
on the bauble.
Love it. Right, bear in mind it had a picture of her granddaughter's face on it.
Oh,
This-
God. She must hate her granddaughter.
This star is smaller than I thought it would be and made out of cheap plastic. Certainly not as pretty as I expected. The box is nice, which is probably the nicest part of the whole thing.
Has this person given anything 5 stars ever?
Yeah, she gave 5 stars to an iPod/iPad charger for the car. She can't understand what's not to like.
Fine.
Oh, good. And she can drive. Hooray!
Yeah, well done.
I was in a restaurant once, and it was down the road from where I used to work, and there was this woman who was visiting the restaurateurs. They always used to give me free meals because they felt sorry for me, because I was a lowly writer. And they said, "Oh, you should talk to." I can't even remember what her name is. Anyway, she's our friend visiting, and the guy walked past at one point, and she was chatting on, and they'd given us a pair of cocktails, and I'm not a fan of the glacé cherry, so I'd taken it aside. She said, "Oh, can I have your cherry? I lost mine ages ago," she said flirtatiously. At the moment where her mate walked past and went, "Yeah, you've still got the box it came in." Anytime anybody ever mentions boxes being the best part of anything, it's the only part of the story. Sorry to lower the tone, but it did make me laugh.
Beautiful way to end it. Mark, we always finish with what are you reading?
What am I reading? I've gone back to. I'm reading Jim Salis, who's an amazing writer. He's one of those writers, which is a kind of sort of poison chalice to be really, because writers who should be way better known and more popular and sell a ton more books than they do. He writes this amazing series about a character called Lou Griffin, and I've just gone right back to the beginning of that series. I'm reading Long-Legged Fly by Jim Salis. I've had a really lucky run. I've read the new books by Mick Herron, which are just amazing. I've read a brilliant debut, which is coming out soon, called Edge of the Grave by Robbie Morrison, which is absolutely just awesome. A debut. And it's like, you read a debut novel, it's like, how can you be that good right off the bat? That's kind of sickening.
Make a note of that.
Really annoying. But I'm just looking over towards what else. Oh yeah, Willie Vlowton, who for anyone who's not heard of Willie Vlowton, he was the main guy and songwriter and lead singer of a wonderful band called Richmond Fontaine, American sort of alt country Americana band. But he's a brilliant novelist. And I've just read his new book called The Night Always Comes. So I'm on a good run. I read a rubbish book as well, but I can't say what that is.
Yeah, let's skim over that.
Yeah.
What about you, Rob?
What about you, fellas? Oh, and me, I'm reading. I've just started Hyde, the new one from Craig Russell.
Okay.
So yeah, I've just started
on the pile.
Really. Oh, and I can tell I'm falling headlong into this. I'm gonna enjoy that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very cool.
What about you guys?
Well, you mentioned Mick Herron. I'm really super late to the party. I read Slow Horses 3 weeks ago, and I've just finished the third Real Tigers.
I envy you. You have such a treat in store. Really.
I just can't read them fast enough.
No. And I think they're giving Mick, belatedly, but a massive kind of commercial push right now. I think he's at this tipping point of just about to become absolutely huge. And funnily enough, today, so I had the proof ages ago, but I just got sent the finished copy today. And in the box is this huge glossy brochure and a beautiful whiskey glass with Slough House on it and a bottle of whiskey.
Yeah.
And all this stuff arrives in your copy of the book. And he's
that's so cool.
a sickeningly lovely bloke who doesn't do social media. It's a really interesting thing because more and more publishers are trying to get writers to just engage all the time with social media. And they say, you can't be successful without it. And every writer I know just goes, Mick Herron, now shut up.
Yeah.
Doesn't do it.
I think we've got him on in September. Is that right?
Oh, yeah. What a treat.
Yeah.
But God, Chris, those books, man, they're so brilliant. So brilliant.
Yeah. I think that because I watched him in conversation with Anne Cleves at an event, and he just seems to be down to earth. But he said something like, no one's safe. Like, I think from the first book, he did something pretty drastic. Second book,
Yeah.
so now that I'm reading them, I just fear for everyone.
I know.
And then the third one, I
know.
couldn't get through it fast
man.
enough.
He doesn't care. He doesn't care.
No.
If they've got to go, they've got to go.
So I'm at that nice point now where I've got something new to choose, and I feel like I should read something for the people that are coming up for the other podcast, but I just want to crack on with him.
You do. No, it's like crack cocaine. It's like crack cocaine.
It really is.
And cheaper, a bit cheaper.
We'll tell Mickey can have that for this next blurb. It's like crack cocaine, just cheaper.
You can have that.
They can have that. What about you, Sean? What are you reading?
I'm reading, speaking of crack cocaine, I'm reading something called I'm Alive and You Are Dead, A Journey Inside the Mind of Philip K. Dick.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Which is, it's the most ridiculous, I don't know if you can see how badly formatted and dense it is, which is kind of like being in the mind of Philip K. Dick, just in the formatting. It's just because he's such an inspiration in terms of sort of taking a really weird idea and then making it into something brilliant in terms of a story. And I just wanted to see what this strange autobiography was, but honestly, it does feel like I'm tripping most of the time I'm reading it, which is fine but weird. So I don't know how far I'll get, but
Well, if you're not enjoying it, give it up. That's my kind of mantra.
I'm a big fan of Philip K. Dick, but I'm not 100% sure that the autobiographer knows the mind of him as well as he expects he wants to. So, but I'm loving it.
Cool.
Awesome.
We need to let you go, Mark.
Well, thanks, guys. I've had a ball. I've had an absolute ball.
Thank you so much for joining us and for sharing and for laughing and taking us back down the 80s to 90s. Well,
cheers, mate.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure.
We'll see you soon.
All the very best.
Take it easy.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
So we, the Blood Brothers, us three, are doing our very own first 2021 live festival.
Woo!
And it's mad because we've just organised it in what feels like a little weekend of flurry activity, thanks muchly to Chris McDonald's tenacious author.
COVID ain't stopping me.
You're involved in a podcast, and literally you turn your back for 5 minutes, and the podcast organised a festival. That's literally what's happening.
So suddenly we've got 30 plus authors hanging out for a festival for a day with us live.
Yeah, I mean, I can't believe these people have said yes.
Yeah,
I can't believe that the people that we've approached have said yes. So grateful for their time. But I think that, there's going to be 6 panels. We're going to take 2 each in terms of hosty duties.
Yep.
And there's going to be a few surprises. And we're going to drip feed information right up until boom time. Oh, it's my turn to say what it's called, isn't it? What's it called? The Blood Brothers big blast boombox.
Oh, giddily on 5 Bs.
Hashtag 5B 2021.
Blood Brothers Big Book Blowout.
That's it. 5Bs. Hashtag 5B 2021. The Blood Brothers the Blood Brothers Blick.
It might not be called this once we've put this out.
The Glove Brothers. Glove Brothers! Who the hell are the Glove Brothers?
Right. You need to start drinking Guinness if you're going to do
I know, I'm stone cold sober tonight.
That's why you can't speak.
The Blood Brothers, the Blood Brothers. The Blood Brothers, Big Blink Blood. Oh, this is so much harder to say than I thought it was going to be. The Blood Brothers, Big Book Blowout. Yeah, go for it, Chris. Please do it.
The Blood Brothers, Big Book Blowout.
One take, Charlie. Incredible.
Look at it in one take. Way you go.
What's wrong with me? The Bug Brothers.
We are not very good at advertising this.
Yeah, join us for the Book Brother Blood.
Rob's got until June to get this right.
And I will get it right.
Professional, it might not be professional. We're very
thank
much looking forward to having everybody on, and thank you to everybody who's agreed to come on. It's an incredible lineup.
Yes.
It is
Who have we
ridiculous.
announced so far?
So far,
Well-
Callie Taylor,
Yes. Will Carver.
yes,
Sarah Pierce.
nailed it.
Boom. Big book blowout. Said it.
Yes, well done. When the
Oh,
pressure's
and you
off, well done.
Big book blowout.
Yeah, and thank you everyone who has agreed to come to it. We can't wait to share the day with you. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah,
It's going to be grand.
it is.
See you there.
See you there. Look at the Eventbrite thing and get your tickets. 'Cause
Yes.
they're free.
Press buttons. Free. Everyone loves stuff when they're free, mate. What was that?
I don't
I
know.
think you'll probably press stop now.
What's wrong with me?